Have you ever had a time in your life where you meet someone that says they're a Christian? They talk about going to youth group all the time. They talk about being involved and serving and all those things. But then you see them at school and they kind of do the polar opposite. They don't really act the way that they should. They kind of include themselves in jokes and activities that they shouldn't, that you wouldn't expect a Christian to do. You kind of wonder to yourself, how is this person actually a follower of Jesus? How is this person living out and doing the things that they say they do, but then live one way in a completely different scenario? And if you're thinking about someone right now, I want to give you a little bit of insight. I was that person. If you've met me before at Sandals, if you've seen me around campuses, I've probably shared this with you, but if you're just watching this online, I was the youth group superstar. I grew up going to church. I was pretty involved. I had a lot of friends there, and I participated in a lot of things. But then I would go to school and would act completely different. Now, this isn't some, little flex or sob story of oh, I was such a terrible person. I was partying and doing all these things. No, it's not the case. I was still afraid of getting in trouble. I had some relatively strict parents that would kick my butt if I ever got out of line. And so I wasn't causing problems, but I definitely was not living and acting like a Christian. If we have not yet met, should probably go back a little bit. My name is McKay. I'm your online youth lead. And Sandals Church Youth exists for students like you to find out what it means to be real with yourself, God, and others. And that's exactly what we're going to get at today. Because for the last several months, we've been going through this series called The Gospel of Matthew. Shocker, it's about the Gospel of Matthew. And slowly but kind of really intensely going through the words of Jesus, looking at his life, seeing how he lived, and trying to take tips and lessons and understanding from the insight that he wanted to give us. And for the last several weeks, we have been in what we call the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is giving some direct teaching to his disciples and giving them some pretty direct insight on how to live their lives. The last message, the last video in this series was about prayer, asking God for the things that we need, and God responding with love and care, saying, hey, your Father wants to give you good gifts. But then as we turn to Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 through 23, Jesus brings a different approach. Now, I'm not going to read the whole passage to you right now, but he talks to his disciples and warns them about false teachers. He says the fruit of your life will determine if you're following Jesus or not, and then ultimately warns a lot of the people listening to him that, hey, there's going to be a lot of people that call on Jesus' name saying, hey, didn't we do these good things? And Jesus says some intense words of hey, I actually never knew you. Now, if you're new to Christianity or following Jesus, this is some pretty intense things to hear. Wait a minute, God's going to say he didn't know me? And the reality is, like we mentioned at the beginning, there's people that claim to know Jesus, but their lives do not show it. Now, there's a passage in the New Testament in the book of James. Very quick, James was the half-brother of Jesus, and we don't have time to get fully into this passage. It's a whole sermon for a whole other time. But James says faith without works is dead. That's been a big debate for churches for a very long time of what does it mean, you have to earn your faith or all these kinds of things, and that's not true. Grace is freely given to us, but what I think we can pull from this in comparison with what Jesus is saying here is that our faith should transform our lives. Our faith should impact us in a way that people see a difference, that you're not one way at youth group and then another way at school, but that your whole life is echoing the grace and forgiveness that Jesus has offered you. And I've seen this happen with a lot of students. We have a great summer, we go up to camp, we take a step back from all the distractions and the crazy things that we're doing, and have these moments of all right, I'm really going to follow Jesus. I'm going to start reading and serving and doing all these great things, only to ultimately fall back into the same struggles, the same unhealthy routines, the same distractions that we swore we wouldn't get back into. So what do we do with that? What do we do with hearing Jesus say there's going to be people that say they're following him, but have actually never truly known him? What do we do with the warning of there's, I think in the passage, there's wolves in sheep's clothing, which is a very common phrase at that time. What do we do with these people that we know are going to come after us? Like I said in the beginning, Sandals Church is about being real with ourselves, God, and others. So here's 3 things that I think can kind of help us process through these thoughts and what we're doing. First, you gotta be real with yourself. Identify where your shortcomings are. Are you someone that is like me, where you're not really partying and doing drugs and doing all of those things, but you're gossiping, you're maybe cheating on that test because everyone else is doing it, maybe you are really harsh with one belief and then not being kind or gracious in another one, maybe it's one of those things where you are great at youth group, but you're living a different life outside of that. If you're far from church, if you've never been to church before, what are the things that are hurting and causing you to come to this point of saying, I need something different? We have to be honest with ourselves. Maybe the vices that we've turned to are not as helpful as we thought they were. Maybe the vices that everyone else says is freeing are actually restricting us more than we thought. Next in that process is you got to be real with God. Jesus says, all who call to him will be saved, but many will say they are saved without actually following and giving their lives to him. And now I know giving your life sounds a little harsh, like, no, you can't put rules, you can't put restrictions on me. Culturally we talk about relationships with restrictions are generally toxic, people are trying to control you. And I'm not going to deny there are unhealthy and toxic relationships in our lives. That's part of a fallen and sinful world. But what Jesus is offering us is a new and healing way of life. He's saying, hey, I know you have struggles. Hey, I know you have sin. I know you have things that are hurting and causing you pain. I want to give you a different way of life. That way can be through grace and through forgiveness, but it also is going to require us to sacrifice some of the maybe preferences we have for our lives. It's going to require us to sacrifice some of the freedoms that we think we deserve that are ultimately holding us into more bondage. Lastly, real with others. As you've now identified where your shortcomings are, you've offered them up to God, how can you bring in healthy community, healthy friends and people to speak into your lives? In the beginning of this early passage of Matthew chapter 7, I believe it's like 13 through 15, Jesus warns of the wolf that is in sheep's clothing, meaning the person that is going to present like they are good, present like they are kind, present like they are this great, wise insight that is ultimately going to bring you more hurt and damage. So take a moment. We're all going back to school. We're back in those moments. Who are the potential wolves in sheep clothing in our lives right now? Now, I'm not saying go out and call these people toxic and cut them out of their lives, but I can almost guarantee there's at least one person in your life, as you think through this, that is not a healthy relationship for you. It could be a friend. Honestly, unfortunately, sometimes it's family. It could be that coworker or that supervisor. And these relationships are challenging to navigate. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to completely cut them out of your life right now, but there should be some boundaries you need to develop. These are all things to think through as we look at Jesus's, honestly, a little harsh words, but these words are harsh to give us insight and to warn us of what is coming. I remember being in high school and thinking every friend I had was a great friend and that we were going to be friends forever. And unfortunately, a lot of those relationships fell apart. Some of them still last and they're great and they're still great friends, but a lot of these situations that we bring ourselves into as we're navigating social situations and being in school and making friends and all those kinds of things, not every person is going to be that good person in your life. So if you're at this point of reading in the Gospel of Matthew or in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is being very, very direct with his people, saying, watch out, watch out, watch out. The last thing I want to drill down on, in the middle of this section, Jesus kind of has a few verses where he's talking about good fruit. It's kind of in line with the wolves in sheep's clothing kind of the thought. He's talking about you can identify who these people are by their fruit. Fruit meaning like how do they live out their lives? What are they doing in their lives that shows they're someone of integrity, someone of wisdom, someone that is honestly following God? Jesus is not asking us to be perfect, but he is asking us to try. He is saying like, hey, take these steps, follow me. Being a disciple in ancient Israel meant you had to let go of your job. You had to let go of your family. You had to travel with this teacher. And that's what Jesus was doing with his disciples. They were traveling as he was teaching them and showing them a new way of life. So if you're here and you're landing on this question, as I've kind of jumbled all over the place, but if you're landing on this question of like, okay, what does it mean to have good fruit? What does it mean for me to not be bad fruit, I guess? It means we're taking honest steps forward in the practices that come with following Jesus. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm going to try to explain it here. First way, we have a Sandals Church app. I'm the online youth lead. I do a lot of work online. Of course, I'm going to talk about this app. But in this app, we have daily rhythms. Read, reflect, and pray. These three things are designed with students in mind to help you learn how to spend time in your Bible, think about what it has just said to you, and then pray for others. Those actions can feel uncomfortable and challenging, especially if you're starting out your walk with Jesus. But I believe these 3 steps will help you daily connect with him, start to understand what Jesus has for you. Secondly, a lot of you are back in school or going back to school. What friend at your campus needs the love of Jesus? What friend can you think of now that is struggling, that is going through a hard time, that needs the hope and love of Jesus? As you're thinking about that friend, I want you to identify what in your life is pointing to the hope of Jesus. Oftentimes we want to help our friends and tell them the good advice and give them the sound wisdom that they need, but more than anything, the way we carry our lives is going to speak much louder than what we actually say with our mouths. Are you someone at school that is bringing hope, bringing peace in hallways of anxiety? Are you someone that's living with integrity when it's a lot easier to just cheat and use these other things to get an easy grade? Are you someone that's saying, no, this might be easier, but I'm going to take the harder route and follow Jesus? These are all things that we kind of wrestle through and think through, and I wish I could say it's easy and you get it immediately. The reality is you don't. Following Jesus is honestly a lifelong commitment of daily learning how to deny what we want, deny the things that make life easier, and follow what Jesus has to offer us. Because while he does promise us good gifts, passage right before he promises us good gifts, but it also requires a sacrifice to say, God, ultimately what you have for my life is better than what I can develop for you. My name is McKay. I'm your online youth lead. If you are enjoying this, please leave a comment. Let me know what you got out of this. I would love to help expand on any thoughts or things I've said today. I love you guys. I'm praying for you. We'll see you next time.